Across the ground, each conflict finds the warrior, not always with blades drawn, but in words, pressure, chaos, and fear. Miyamoto Musashi lived in an era where calm meant survival. One breathed too fast, one thought too loud, and death followed. Across the ground, yet Musashi was never remembered for rage, he was remembered for stillness. This is not a story about fighting others. It is a story about mastering the war within. When the heart races, when the mind fractures, when pressure demands reaction. Across the ground, modern men face different battlefields, deadlines instead of duels, noise instead of steel, but the nervous system has not changed. Under pressure, most lose presence. Ego tightens, fear speaks louder than wisdom. Across the ground, Musashi discovered a discipline so quiet it looks like nothing. Yet it breaks chaos at the root, a way of standing unmoved while the world crashes forward. This story follows a warrior on the edge of collapse, across the ground guided by Musashi's silent path, not toward dominance, but toward unshakable calm. Because the strongest man is not the loudest, he is the one who remains still when everything demands he react. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep bringing you great content. Chapter 1. When pressure exposes the warrior, pressure never announces itself. It arrives disguised as responsibility, expectation, urgency. Across the ground, it slips into the body before the mind has time to argue. The warrior once believed himself strong, not because he never felt fear, but because he learned how to hide it. He moved fast, he spoke decisively, he stayed busy, and in motion. Across the ground is momentum for mastery. But pressure has a way of slowing time. In moments of conflict, his breath shortened, the chest tightened, thoughts collided like blades in the dark. Outwardly, he remained composed. Inwardly, a storm gathered. Across the ground, Ignis. This was exposure. Ancient warriors understood something modern men for discipline that survives comfort is not discipline at all. True discipline is revealed only when control is threatened. In Musashi's era, pressure meant life or death. A duel did not allow excuses. Fear was not philosophical, it was physical, immediate, unforgiving. Today, the battlefield has changed. Deadlines instead of duels, reputation instead of survival. Across the ground, but the nervous system does not recognize symbols. Only threat. Under pressure, the body narrows, vision tightens. Breath becomes shallow, the mind searches for certainty, for dominance, for escape. Across the ground, modern science confirms what ancient systems already knew. When fear rises, the mind shifts from awareness to reaction. Presence collapses. The ego takes command, and ego does not seek truth, it seeks safety. Across the ground, the warrior noticed this pattern too late. When criticized, he defended instead of listening. When challenged, he rushed instead of observing. When uncertain, he forced decisions to feel in control. Each reaction brought momentary relief. Across the ground, each reaction weakened him. The Stoics warned against this centuries ago. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments of them. Musashi lived this truth without writing it plainly. Across the pressure did not create the warrior's fear. It revealed where fear already lived. This realization was unsettling, because it stripped away excuses. If pressure is the teacher, then every moment of agitation is instruction. Across the ground, the warrior began to sense a deeper fracture, not in his skills, but in his identity. He believed strength meant never hesitate, never appearing unsure, never allowing silence to stretch too long. But this belief chained him to reaction. In the absence of presence, identity tightens, and a tight mind cannot see clearly. The warrior felt the quiet shame that follows loss of control. Not dramatic, not visible, just heavy. Across the ground, I should be better than this. I've trained harder than this. I know better. But knowing is not being. Pressure stripped away the illusion that understanding equals mastery. Across the ground, it exposed the distance between intellectual discipline and embodied calm. Musashi once wrote that the way is revealed when the mind is unfixed. But the warrior's mind was fixed on outcome, on image, on winning the moment. Across the ground, fear thrives in fixation. The more the warrior tried to dominate pressure, the more it dominated him. The more he resisted fear, the louder it spoke. This was the turning point, not a victory, but a pause. For the first time, across the ground, he did not seek to overcome pressure, he observed it. He noticed how it rose in the body before thought, how reaction followed sensation, not reason, how presence disappeared the moment identity felt threatened. Across the ground, this awareness did not bring comfort. It brought clarity. Pressure was no longer the enemy, it was the mirror. It showed where discipline ended and habit began, where silence was replaced by noise, where ego demanded control instead of mastery. Across the ground, the warrior understood something that could not be undone. His suffering was not caused by pressure itself, but by his refusal to remain present within it. And presence, he realized, is not found by force, it is discovered in stillness. Across the ground, exposed, unsettled, awake, the warrior sensed that his old methods would no longer carry him forward. To move deeper, he would have to learn a discipline quieter than effort, older than technique, and harsher than struggle. A discipline built not on reaction, but on silence. Silence is uncomfortable to those who have never mastered it. The warrior learned this the moment he stopped filling space with motion. After pressure exposed his inner noise, across the ground, he searched for answers not in noise but in absence. It was here that the path of Miyamoto Musashi appeared, not as legend but as discipline. Musashi was not remembered for shouting commands or displaying rage. Across the ground, he was feared because he did not react. In an age where a single mistake meant death, Musashi cultivated something rarer than skill: emotional neutrality. While others tightened under threat, he loosened. While others rushed, he waited. Through the warrior studied this and felt resistance rise. Silence felt like weakness, stillness felt like surrender. But Musashi's life contradicted this instinct. Before duels, Musashi often arrived late, not from disrespect but from control. Across the ground, he refused to allow others to set his rhythm. Time itself bent around his calm. This was not arrogance. It was presence. Musashi understood a truth most warriors avoid: reaction is the first loss. Across the ground, to react emotion is to surrender authority over the moment. Anger clouds perception. Fear narrows choice. Urgency creates mistakes. The warrior began to notice how often his own reactions betrayed him. A sharp reply that escalated conflict. Across the ground, a rushed decision that closed better paths. A defensive posture that invited pressure. Musashi's discipline was simple but brutal. Observe without attachment, act without agitation, move without announcing intention. Across the ground was not empty. It was full of awareness. Modern science mirrors this ancient system. When the mind remains calm, the prefrontal cortex stays active, clarity remains available. Choice expands. Across the ground, Musashi did not overpower opponents with strength alone. He overwhelmed them by standing where fear could not reach. The warrior practiced silence in small ways, pausing before speaking, breathing through discomfort, allowing moments to unfold without interference. At first, the ego protested. Silence felt like losing ground. Not reacting felt like defeat, but something unexpected happened. In silence, others revealed themselves, their impatience, apart their insecurity, their need to provoke. The warrior saw clearly for the first time. Reaction had blinded him, stillness sharpened perception. Musashi wrote that the true path cannot be seen when the mind is fixed. Silence unfixed the warrior's mind. He realized that calm is not passivity. It is strategic restraint, a held blade, not a lowered one. This discipline demanded humility. To remain silent while misunderstood, to pause while provoked, cross the ground, to choose presence over image. The warrior felt fear arise in these moments, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing control. But fear lost its authority when it was observed instead of obeyed. Musashi did not teach through speeches, across through embodiment, through showing that silence creates space and space creates mastery. The warrior understood now stillness was not an absence of action, it was preparation for precise action. In silence, across the ground, the mind gathers itself. In silence, ego loosens its grip. In silence, the warrior returns to the center. This was the silent way, not mystical, not gentle, but exacting, demanded discipline stronger than force. Across the ground, and as the warrior stood in this silence, he sensed that calm alone was not enough. Silence had to be trained, embedded, forged into reflex. For without training, silence collapses under chaos. The path ahead was clear, to walk Musashi's way. Across the ground, the warrior would have to discipline the mind before ever trusting the sword. Silence, once discovered, does not remain on its own. It must be trained or it fades the moment pressure returns. The warrior learned this quickly. In calm moments, across the ground, stillness came easily. But under stress, the body remembered old patterns. Breath shortened, thoughts accelerated. The urge to act rose like a reflex. Musashi understood this weakness long before it was named. Across the ground, he trained the mind with the same seriousness as the blade, not through comfort, but through repetition. The warrior began where Musashi would have begun, with breath, slow, deliberate, unforced. Across ground, he noticed how breath anchored attention to the body. When the breath steadied, the mind followed. When the breath scattered, so did awareness. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient discipline. Breath regulates the nervous system. Across the ground, it signals safety to the body. It keeps the mind from slipping into survival mode. The warrior practiced breathing not to relax but remain present. Next came observation. Musashi taught that perception must be wide, not fixed. Across the ground, the warrior trained his awareness beyond a single point. He listened without preparing replies. He watched without immediate judgment. This was uncomfortable. The ego thrives on control. Observation without reaction felt like exposure. A cried like standing unarmed. But repetition changed the experience. The warrior noticed something subtle. Fear weakened when it was observed fully. When he remained inside discomfort without resisting, it passed on its own. This was a revelation. A fear demanded reaction only when it was denied attention. When met with presence, it dissolved. Training continued in stillness and in motion, walking slowly, eating deliberately, performing simple tasks with complete attention. Across the ground, Musashi believed that how one does small things is how one does everything. The warrior saw truth in this. When attention wandered in minor moments, it fractured under pressure. Discipline was no longer about intensity, it was about consistency. Across the ground, each day the warrior returned to the same practices. Breath, observation, restraint. The mind resisted. It craved novelty, speed, recognition. But Musashi's system did not negotiate with the ego. It outlasted it. Gradually, across the ground, the warrior felt a shift. Silence no longer felt forced. Presence began to appear automatically. Under pressure, awareness widened instead of narrowing. Choices appeared where reaction once lived. Science would call this neural conditioning. Across the ground, Musashi called it readiness. The warrior realized that calm under pressure was not a momentary state, it was a trained response. What was practiced in stillness appeared in chaos without effort. Across the ground, this was the difference between knowing and being. Musashi trained not to avoid conflict, but to meet it without losing center. The warrior now understood the path's demand. Training was not preparation for some future test. Across the ground, it was the test itself. Each pause was mastery. Each moment of restraint rewired the mind. This training did not remove fear, it changed its role. Fear became a signal, not a command. Across the ground, the warrior no longer sought to eliminate discomfort. He learned to stand within it. And in doing so, he felt something ancient awaken, a steadiness older than thought. But training alone was not enough. Across the ground, because no practice is complete until it is tested. And the next test would strike at the deepest reflex of all. The need to react. The test never arrives when the warrior feels ready. It comes suddenly, sharp, personal, unavoidable. Across the groundless word. A public challenge, a moment where silence feels like loss. The warrior felt the familiar surge rise in his body. Heat in the chest, tension in the jaw, the ancient urge to strike back. Not with steel, but with ego. Across guard, this was the reflex Musashi warned against. Reaction feels powerful. Immediate, decisive, but reaction is not strength, it is surrender. Musashi believed that the one who reacts first gives the initiative away. The warrior now stood at that edge. Across the ground, the training whispered one instruction remained. He paused. That pause felt longer than it was. Inside it, fear spoke loudly. You will look weak. You are losing control. The warrior recognized the voice. It was not wisdom. A brand, it was identity fighting to survive. Ego is born from image. It needs defense. It needs validation. Reaction feeds it. The warrior remembered Musashi's discipline to let the opponent reveal themselves first. In modern terms, across the ground. This meant restraint. He allowed the moment to unfold without interference. The discomfort peaked, then softened. Something remarkable happened. The other person faltered. Their aggression lost momentum. A breath, the space created by silence unsettled them. Stillness had shifted the balance. The warrior saw clearly now reaction is rooted in the need to protect identity, not in the need to act wisely. Each time he withheld reaction, the ego weakened. Across the ground, this did not mean suppressing emotion, it meant refusing to obey it. Modern psychology supports this ancient trim. Impulse control strengthens with delay. The brain learns that not every stimulus requires response. Musashi trained this relentlessly, not to appear calm, but to remain sovereign over his actions. The warrior faced more tests, provocation, urgency, pressure layered upon pressure. Each time he returned to presence, breath, observation. Across the ground, choice. Sometimes he failed, reaction slipped through. But failure no longer crushed him. It instructed him. Each moment of restraint built strength. Each moment of reaction revealed where training was incomplete. The ground breaking the reflex was not dramatic, it was quiet, repetitive, demanding. The warrior noticed a shift in how fear behaved. It still appeared, but it no longer dictated movement. Fear had lost authority. Rashi wrote that mastery is achieved when the mind does not cling. The warrior now understood this deeply. When he released the need to win every moment, he gained control over the entire field. Reaction had once felt like survival. Across the ground, now felt like a trap. Stillness became the default. Action became deliberate. The warrior was no longer pulled by impulse. He moved by choice. This discipline did not make him passive. It made him precise. The ground, and with precision came power. Not loud, not forceful, but undeniable. The reflex had not been destroyed, it had been subordinated. Ego no longer stood at the center. Presence did. The warrior sensed that something fundamental had shifted. Across the ground, calm was no longer fragile, it was taking root. But mastery demanded more than control, it required integration, turning stillness into embodied strength. Stillness is often misunderstood, it is mistaken for hesitation, for softness. Across the ground. But the warrior now knew better. Stillness was not the absence of power, it was power under control. Where reaction once lived, there was now space, and in that space, clarity emerged. Across the warrior noticed the change first in his body. His breath no longer betrayed him under pressure. The chest remained open, the jaw relaxed, the eyes softened, yet sharpened. This was not accidental. Across the ground, it was the result of discipline layered upon discipline. Musashi believed that true strength is quiet because it does not need to announce itself. A blade does not shout before it cuts. A mountain does not prove its weight. The warrior's presence began to affect others. In tense moments, people slowed around him. Arguments lost momentum. Urgency softened. Stillness altered the emotional field. This was not dominance through force. It was authority through presence. Modern psychology would describe this as nervous system regulation. A calm system influences those nearby. Humans unconsciously synchronize with steadiness. Musashi lived this centuries before it was measured. Across the ground, the warrior no longer rushed to fifth silence, pause to stretch. In those pauses, truth surfaced. Others revealed their intentions, their impatience, their uncertainty. Stillness became a mirror. Across the ground, the warrior realized something critical. Calm is contagious, so is chaos. Where he once absorbed tension, he now neutralized it. Fear still appeared, but it arrived without urgency. It was observed, acknowledged, and released. Of ground, this was controlled power, not explosive, not reactive. Musashi wrote that when one understands the rhythm of conflict, there is no need to hurry. The warrior embodied this rhythm now. He acted neither too early nor too late. Decisions arose naturally from awareness. There was no struggle to appear strong. Strength was felt quietly. The ego, once desperate for recognition, had grown silent, not destroyed. Integrated. Around, the warrior understood that ego is not an enemy. It becomes destructive only when it leads. Now it followed. Stillness allowed the warrior to respond instead of react, to choose words carefully, to move deliberately. This was not slow living. It was precise living. Musashi's later years reflected this mastery. He fought fewer battles yet remained undefeated. The warrior saw the lesson clearly. Mastery reduces unnecessary conflict. Power that must prove itself has not yet matured. Across the grounds was not something the warrior did anymore. It was something he was. Under pressure, he did not reach for calm. Calm was already there. This did not make life easier. It made it clearer. Challenges still came. Pressure still pressed across the ground, but the warrior no longer bent inward. He stood grounded. The path had reshaped him, not into a louder man, but into a deeper one. He understood now that true authority does not dominate the moment. It stabilizes it. Across the ground, stillness had become his signature, his discipline, his strength. And yet the journey was not complete, because mastery is not a destination, it is a way of walking. The warrior sensed that the path ahead would demand constancy, not a fort, across the ground, but awareness. The warrior did not leave with trophies. There was no final duel, no audience, no moment that demanded applause. He left with something quieter and far heavier. Clarity. He understood now that calm is not something you achieve and keep. It is something you return to again and again under different skies. Musashi never claimed enlightenment. He claimed discipline. The warrior saw the truth in this. Across the ground, every day would present pressure, every moment would invite reaction. The path was not about eliminating conflict. It was about meeting it without losing center. Calm had become his ground, not his goal. Across the ground, he noticed how his relationship with fear had changed. Fear still appeared before important decisions, before uncertainty, before the unknown. But fear no longer felt like a threat, felt like a signal, a reminder to return to presence. Across the ground, this was mastery, not dominance over emotion, but partnership with it. The warrior walked without urgency now, not slow, intentional. He no longer rushed to define himself. Identity had loosened its grip. Across the ground, Musashi taught that attachment clouds perception. The warrior had learned to let moments pass without needing to own them. In silence, he listened more than he spoke. In conflict, he observed more than he asserted. In pressure, across the ground, he breathed before acting. These were not techniques anymore, they were reflexes. Modern science would call this integration. Ancient systems called it alignment. The warrior's presence carried weight across, not because he demanded respect, but because he did not require it. Calm had reshaped his decisions. He chose fewer battles. He wasted less energy. He conserved strength for what mattered. This was not withdrawal from life. Across the ground, it was engagement without entanglement. The warrior realized something final and liberating: pressure would never disappear. But pressure no longer dictated his behavior. Musashi walked his path alone, not because others could not follow across the ground, but because mastery is always personal. The warrior accepted this solitude, not as isolation, but as responsibility. Each moment required awareness. Each choice required presence. There was no finish line, only depth. Across the ground, the path continued, through work, through relationships, through uncertainty. Calm was no longer fragile. It was resilient, and resilience is quiet. The warrior understood now that unshakable calm is not the absence of movement, the ground, but movement guided by stillness. This was the ancient path, not secret, but demanding. Those who seek shortcuts never find it. Those who embrace discipline walk it without needing permission. The warrior did not claim mastery, he embodied it. And in that embodiment, he carried Musashi's silent discipline forward, not as history, but as lived truth. Calm under pressure is not gifted to the warrior. It is forged through silence, discipline, and the courage to remain present when fear demands reaction.